Jefferson, another team in the 88 that is under new management. Brandon Hanna taking over that team. He was the offensive coordinator last year for the Falcons, and now the reins are his. And what does he have returning, and what does he have, to replace, and kind of what the schedule looks like? Ty, talk about the Falcons a little bit.
So Jefferson is actually a team I'm really excited for this year. 3-7 overall last year, including the playoffs. Scored 119 points, allowed 198. Deceiving though, because this was a very, very young team, a very young defensive team, and a very young offensive team. Let's talk a little bit about what they have returning. Offensively, you got a junior this year in Trent Hodge, who's a wide receiver. He was second team NE8 last year as a sophomore. So that's right off the bat impressive. Also, a sophomore this year in Danny Bruckman, who was a freshman second team NE8 running back last year. He's returning. Also, defensive player to watch, a freshman second team NE8 defensive lineman who's returning as a sophomore, Harrison Woodworth this year. There's so many young splotches all over this team, Anthony, and there's a lot of talent in this team that is very young. 3-7 record last year, so not terrible. You saw they scored 119 points, allowed 198. Defensively, you could be a little bit sharper, but I mean, scoring 119 points on a team filled with freshmen, that's pretty solid there, and they have an offense that has something to it.
At the end of the day, you win or lose, and we get that. But man, Jefferson was a couple of plays away. I'm not kidding. Couple of plays away from being 5-5 instead of 3-7. I mean, they were right there. They had a goal line play set up. I believe it was against Hubbard, where they score a touchdown, they win, and the play just didn't work the way they wanted it to. And I believe they actually had a wide open receiver that their quarterback unfortunately missed. It was right there. He just didn't throw it to that guy. So a couple of plays that Jefferson was right there in games. So competitive. We already talked about how tough it is to make that road trip to Jefferson to play the Falcons anyway. They're a dangerous team. I don't care what anyone says. They're a dangerous team in the NE8, and they could throw a monkey wrench into things really quick.
Now, I still do think I think they're about one more year away from taking that huge jump and being like 7, 8, 9 win team. But I think you might see them take that jump and become 5 or a 6 win team. Remember, you got a lot of guys returning. These are sophomores that were freshmen, that were second team NE8 last year. That's a pretty huge honor to get as a freshman. So, there's 3 guys here looking to get first team honors: Trent Hodge, Danny Bruckman, and Harrison Woodworth, that are going to be really your core. You got your Hodge and Bruckman on offense, Woodworth on defense. You have your guys to build around and a young core to build around now. It's going to be exciting times for Jefferson here.
Remember, them in South Range, the only 2 Division 5 teams in the NE8. So 5-6 wins against almost exclusively Division up teams might be enough to get them into a playoff spot.
Absolutely. And I mean, new coaching with a new mindset. He's got a lot of young talent too. And that's such a beautiful thing to come into with having a lot of young talent.
Sometimes getting a new coach with a young team can be dangerous, but he's been in the program. He's the offensive coordinator. He knows exactly what he's got. He doesn't have to instill a brand new culture or a brand new set of schemes. He's just taking the next step of responsibility, really. So I think that's an important factor.
He was the offensive coordinator that got freshman Danny Bruckman a second team NE8 and sophomore Trent Hodge at the time, wide receiver, a second team NE8. He's got both those players back as the head coach now, but I mean, obviously there's something there, and these players take to him. They take to his scheme, and it's going to be it should be some fun times to watch up in Jefferson.
You know what should be making Jefferson really excited? They have a wide receiver coming back that could make the jump from second team to first team, and an NE8 that overall very young secondaries in the NE8, and Jefferson might take advantage of that with their turf field and their ability to throw the ball a little bit more than most teams in the conference.
Absolutely. Taking a look, too, at Jefferson's schedule. Now, looking at Jefferson's schedule, it's always interesting to look because the teams, at least from around here, there's an advantage and a disadvantage to Jefferson because you got to travel to Jefferson, so it's a huge home advantage. But when they have to travel down here, it becomes a huge away advantage. So the home games and the away games mean that much more. But looking at their first 3 games that are non-NE8 games, non-conference, August 20th at Grand Valley, August 27th at Painesville Harvey, and September 3rd, Edgewood comes in to play Jefferson. Those are 3 games right off the bat too. Again,
3 teams that are very familiar with playoff runs.
Yeah.
I mean,
again, the NE8 showing they're not afraid to schedule up non-conference games, and Jefferson taking a little bit different road than some of the other NE8 teams as far as the competition they're taking, but I mean, not shying away from competition at all.
I'd have to be corrected, but I believe Painesville Harvey is also Division 5. So Jefferson trying to take a little bit of a glimpse into what they could be seeing in the playoffs if they're able to get to that one of the top 16 seats.
And I mean, it's a great schedule too, because like you said, it gives you a glimpse, and it also just really, it shows you where you are, how far away, how close you are to some of the better teams in your division. So that's a game where you can really see, how do I match up against some of my division's best right now? And that's a great scheduling opportunity to really say, I'll take my best, you take your best, let's see who's better. And I mean, it should be a great early game and really early test for Jefferson.
Yeah, and you look at their NE8 schedule, and it's so important, like who they have on the road and who they have at home.
Yeah, we're looking at September 10th. They go to Girard. September 17th, home versus Niles. 24th at Hubbard. October 1st, home versus Struthers. October 8th at South Range. October 15th, home versus Poland. And as we know, that October 22nd game, home versus Lakeview.
So until those last 2, they kind of alternate home away, home away, home away.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you got to protect home field. You got to win your home games. And then if they can sneak one of those road games and win one of those road games, I think they'll be sitting pretty for the playoffs. I got to tell you.
And you know what? The favorable matchups too, the ones that aren't going to be a little bit teetered, because the Hubbard, you're probably going to lean towards Hubbard. South Range, you're probably going to lean towards South Range in that matchup. Both of those are away games, so it's going to be a little bit heavier. But those 50-50 games that you would normally see, Struthers, Niles, those and Lakeview, those games are all at home too. So those 3 teams, Struthers, Niles, Lakeview, all have to make that drive up to Jefferson area now. Jefferson getting that home field advantage, it might mean that much more, because I think those are the 3 teams that they're going to be competing with in the middle of that NE8.
Yeah, and like I said, protecting the home field going to be crucial in Jefferson, and you got winnable games coming up at home.
Yeah, and you look at the way they close out their schedule, that October 8th at South Range, October 15th home versus Poland. That was 1 and 2 in your NE8, so you're going to get stiff competition there, and then you close out the season with Lakeview. So Jefferson, again, in the same situation like we said Lakeview was in, where Jefferson might have a good win-loss record, but they might drop 1, maybe 2. South Range and Poland, they might even come out 2-0. Who knows? But that's going to be a tough schedule. But you got that last game versus Lakeview that might have huge playoff implications for both teams.
I think the biggest game of the year for Jefferson and kind of telling us how they're going to be is that Niles game. Niles comes to Jefferson, right? So yes. Niles is going to be a game where I think we either decide whether Jefferson's going to be where they were last year or they're going to take the next step, because Niles is in the same boat. So you have to separate yourselves from the teams that are kind of in the same boat as you if you want to take steps towards betterment. So Niles in the same kind of boat. They struggled a little bit last year trying to replace a lot. Jefferson, same boat. So we'll see how they can kind of separate themselves from the Dragons or not separate themselves, however that game goes.
And with the schedule previous, I mean, Girard, Edgewood, Painesville, Harvey, and Grand Valley, 3 of them being away games, with Edgewood being the only home game. It's really a schedule too where you can realistically see them possibly being 2-2, and that could be a very definitive game where you could be 3-2, 2-3. And it's going to be middle of the season, September 17th. So, I mean, the weather's going to be good. Everyone should be healthy. Rush should be all off. These 2 teams should be ready to go come September 17th.
If they can come out of that Niles game 3-2, they'll be sitting really pretty to try to get to a playoff spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you follow with at Hubbard, home versus Struthers, at South Range, home versus Poland, home versus Lakeview. You can possibly winning 2 games, then being Division 5 out of those next 5 games. If you start 3-2 with their first 5, yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Anthony. That Niles game is going to be definitive because that's their 5th game on the schedule, and it's really going to map out the next 5 games how much work needs to be done. Because when you look at your opponents, Hubbard, Struthers, Poland, South Range, and Lakeview, it's a lot easier to only win 2 of those games than 3 of those. Trying to look at that.
I think the biggest advantage Jefferson's going to have this year against a lot of the teams that they play in the 88 is they're returning a receiving core that is very experienced, and they're going to be going up against some young secondaries in the 88. Not a lot of teams in that conference are returning a lot of people in the secondary, so that's going to be an advantage that they're going to have to try to exploit every week. Their ability to use their experience in the receiver slot to maybe break some gaps in secondaries and blow the tops off of some defenses, because Jefferson likes to throw the ball, unlike a lot of teams in the 88 who are more of a running style. Jefferson is not afraid to air it out, so they're going to have to do that against a majority of young secondaries in the conference.
And that could point to some of Jefferson's struggles, because we forget to mention, too, there was a lot of games that had to face with rain last year, too. On top of the fact that there was the COVID, there was a lot of games that were rained out and a lot of games that were just rain in them in general, a lot of bad weather.
Thankfully, nothing like week one happened again.
Nothing like the monsoon. But there was definitely rain throughout the week. So it seemed like almost every Friday or Saturday, at least one of the games was facing rain, and it seemed like Jefferson was in a lot of those rainy games too. So, I mean, it prohibits the pass too, and it prevents the pass from being as effective in the rain. So hopefully some better weather too will benefit the Jefferson Falcons this year too.